welcome to everyone to this online conversation on the topic business governance and conduct. I will start with the first question to you, Jean-François. Do we see a shift from a shareholder dominant approach to a stakeholder oriented corporate governance? And how can the interest of shareholders be aligned with that of other stakeholders?
I would say that for many years now, the governance issues have been more and more important for investors. CFA Institute has published a government guide since about more than 20 years. I would say there's many points who points to the fact that governance is important. Just briefly, because that is one aspect that we had some numerous scandals in the past because of lack of governance. So a first point would be to look at governance to avoid any potential problems, but that's for short-term investors. For longer-term investors, obviously there is an alignment between the company itself, the board of directors, the administration directors, and all the stakeholders. This is the only way to ensure that you have long-term growth. And long-term growth is a key to valuation and to prospects. This is a key to potential profit for all investors. I would say that for a global investor, a global investor will look at a global portfolio and not on individual stocks, but how all the company interact between themselves. And if we look at in the ESG component, environmental and social issues, obviously, if you don't consider those issues as a global aspect, you kill or you destroy some long-term growth and some long-term profit for the portfolio.
Thank you, Jean-François. Florian, any reactions on the importance of these distinctions between short-term, long-term, and for global investors to have the big picture?
Yeah, I think that Jean-François, you highlight something that is very important in this way you framed it, because you highlight how important it is to have long-term growth. But in any case, you highlight how important growth is for companies, right? And today, companies, if they do not grow, they have an issue in terms of competition. If they do not innovate, they have an issue in terms of competition and they can fail. And if we imagine that we have to integrate other types of stakeholders, so that means that people that are not necessarily involved in the financial interests of companies, then we can, in fact, discuss going beyond growth and even asking if growth is beneficial to our current society, right? But if we focus on a shareholder type of management of companies, these types of questions cannot be answered because there is always going to be some types of interests that are going to go toward wanting to grow eternally, right? So I think that this question is key, how Jean-François highlight this, because if we have to integrate stakeholders beyond shareholders, then the question of growth becomes apparent in terms of how it can be a systemic pressure.
Thank you, Florian. I think it's very interesting because my view was concerning more the shareholder perspective, but I don't forget about stakeholders, because obviously a company cannot survive without the stakeholders. So I fully agree with you. Yeah.
So thank you, Jean-François and Florian, for your insights on these questions. I will move to the next one, which I will direct to Florian this time. Florian, in the financial sector, this evolution is also reflected in the strong shift towards ESG, investing, environment and social and governance. What are the primary ethical challenges financial institutions face when integrating ESG principles into the governance frameworks?
I think that if you begin by asking this question, I think the most regular answer that you can have is the fact that we have difficulties in having high profitability for ethical behaviors, for example. But I think, and in my research, what was highlighted is that we actually lack tools to decide what is really ethical. In neoliberal or liberal thinking, what is ethical is what is profitable. And so that's easy. You take a decision. If it creates more profits, it is ethical in neoliberalism. But when you try and go beyond a question of price and you try to integrate ethics, then it becomes really difficult to understand what really is an ethical behaviors in an organization. So you have carbon monitoring, which is one way of framing climate change ethics, for example. But if you try and go beyond quantitative aspects of ethics, such as subjective well-being, then you are lacking in terms of tools. So that to me is one of the key aspects of, the key challenge in terms of ethics in governance.
Thank you, Florian. Jean-François, do you agree with what Florian said?
Yes, I think one of the most difficult issue for investors like us is to, as Florian said, is to quantify what could be the goal. We of course can analyze what is a company is doing. We can understand what the governance is and how what are the goal of a company, but we need also to figure and to give some quantitative aspect. And the biggest challenge of the finance industry now is certainly to establish some ratio or some quantitative goal in order to understand where a company is going. And as Florian said, that the most important and maybe the most challenging aspect of our business now, as far as ESG is concerned.
Thank you. Thank you. So finally, one question to you both. How can regulators ensure that businesses adhere to ethical practices in the governance and ESG commitments?
But I think that if we look at the goal of the regulators, they want to more ethical aspect, more environmental challenge, and we are all facing some big risk in the future. And the regulator started by the finance industry. They ask investors to promote ESG issues first, and as far as European regulation is concerned, is now this is a part of industry to adapt and to answer what investors are asking for. And that's a nice way to put things in perspective. The financer should ask the industry to behave in a good or ethical manner, or to include stakeholders in their goals.
Okay, thank you, Jean-François. Florian, do you have another view, or do you agree with Jean-François?
Yeah, well, you asked the question about how to ensure compliancy to ethical behaviors that would be imposed by the regulator, right? I think that if we are looking at social dynamics, it's all about catch me if you can in terms of the relationship between the regulator and the organization. And so that means that there is always going to be a challenge in terms of compliancy. That's the first thing to recognize. This will never be a question that's going to be ended. We always need to be inventive from the regulator's perspective. So that's the first thing I think that needs to be mentioned. And the other thing is we need this dynamic to be including larger stakeholders. So at the moment, the regulator is representing the government or the democratic decisions, but this is difficult for the regular citizen to understand what really is regulated. And so that means to me that one of the perspectives of the future is to really understand how we can include a broader participation of stakeholders within the regulator arenas of discussion.
Thank you, Florian. Jean-François, any other final conclusion?
That's a very interesting point by Florian. As a professional for the last 40 years, as you say, I'm strongly, I like to encourage all individuals to be shareholder and then to be better stakeholder. If the general investor are more involved in the life of companies, I'm sure that their behavior will be improved. And I'm very strongly advocate of equity investment for the benefit of the society, as the ultimate goal.
Yeah. Thank you very much to both of you for sharing your expertise and your experience on this very interesting topic. I think